apple pie and anticipation. The kitchen air hummed with the spiced sweetness of cinnamon and baking apples, a fragrance Rose had cultivated in that very space for half a century. Annually, her blue ribbon apple pie graced the Albright family picnic, a custom extending back into the mists of time. Today's pie boasted a perfectly burnished crust, its edges meticulously crimped, each indentation a tiny monument to summer gatherings gone by. The echoes of laughter across picnic blankets, the dance of fireflies in the twilight, and John, forever John, his arm a comforting weight around her shoulders, his eyes creasing with mirth. John. His memory was a constant presence, a comforting shawl against the chill, yet also a poignant ache in the solitude. 7 years had passed, but without his booming laugh to fill them, her world remained muted. She slid the pie from the oven, the warmth kissing her cheeks. Perhaps this year held a surprise. Perhaps this year, the rhythm would shift. It wasn't dissatisfaction she felt, not entirely. Her children thrived, her grandchildren were a source of boundless delight. Yet, at times, a sense of predetermination settled over her, as if she were an actor reciting lines from a well-worn script. Upstairs, her dress lay waiting on the bed, a floral print acquired last spring, in hopes it wouldn't transform her into a walking bouquet. As she drew it on, her reflection caught her eye. The years had carved their stories into the lines around her eyes and mouth, tales of joy and heartache, of devotion and bereavement. Her hair, once a field of golden wheat, now shone with a gentle silver. She was not the ingenue John had adored, but she was far from invisible. A delicate flush warmed her neck. She applied a touch of crimson kiss, lipstick, a frivolous indulgence that had seemed audacious at the time. The park was alive with the energy of the picnic. The excited cries of children punctuated the air as they circled the ancient oak, the picnic's steadfast anchor. Carol, her daughter, presided over a table overflowing with salads and assorted delicacies. David, her son, was engrossed in a spirited baseball debate with his nephews. The familiar tableau unfolded before her like a cherished, dog-eared photograph. Rose carefully placed her apple pie on the dessert table, a place of honor reserved for her masterpiece. Scanning the crowd, a tide of affection swelled within her. Her family. Her testament. And still, a part of her remained detached, observing a scene where her participation felt incomplete. She noticed Michael, a friend of David's youngest, setting up a badminton net. He was lanky, with unruly dark hair that perpetually drifted across his brow. She'd encountered him at previous picnics, but he'd always seemed reserved, almost shy. A pleasant young man, courteous and helpful. But today, a subtle shift resonated within her. Their gazes met across the expanse of green, and instead of a polite acknowledgement, he offered a slow, knowing smile. A delicate tremor ran through her, an unfamiliar awakening, a stirring of something long subdued. She swiftly averted her gaze, feigning preoccupation with the silverware, her heart performing an erratic dance. The atmosphere thrummed with expectation, not solely for the familiar comforts of the picnic, but for something beyond, something tantalizingly out of reach. Something new. A lingering glance. The screen door announced Tom's arrival with a metallic screech, a gust of cool, earthy-scented air rushing in. Rose saw a young man behind him, a hesitant smile gracing his features. "Grandma, this is Liam," Tom declared, a friendly slap on Liam's back accompanying the introduction. "Liam, meet my grandma, Rose." Liam extended a hand, his expression open. "It's a real pleasure, Mrs. Albright. Tom's always talking about you." His handshake was surprisingly firm, his palm warm against hers, sparking an unexpected sensation. "Please call me Rose," she replied, her voice betraying a slight tremor. "Welcome. And the pleasure's all mine, Liam. You're just in time, as you can see, I could use another pair of hands." Tom chuckled. "Liam's a kitchen prodigy. Better than me, for sure." Rose was already reaching for the apple pie, its burnished crust a testament to countless repetitions of the recipe. "Speak of the devil, Liam, this needs to reach the table before the hordes descend." "Allow me," Liam offered, stepping closer into her orbit. Their shoulders briefly connected as he reached for the pie plate. A subtle fragrance, sandalwood mingled with Liam's own unique essence, drifted towards Rose, causing a momentary acceleration of her pulse. His fingers brushed hers as he took the pie. The briefest of contacts, yet Rose felt a current. "Thank you, dear," she murmured, a little flustered. She fussed with the napkins, attempting to quell the heat rising in her cheeks. As Liam carefully carried the pie towards the back, Tom followed, launching into a monologue about the upcoming football game. Rose's gaze followed Liam's lithe frame, appreciating the easy grace of his movements. He exuded a quiet self-assurance that intrigued her. Following them onto the porch, she joined her family's cheerful cacophony. Spreading the napkins on the picnic table, she noticed her hands weren't quite steady. Her gaze lifted, meeting Liam's across the yard. He stood by the old oak, engaged in conversation with Tom, but his warm honey gaze was fixed on her. It was a prolonged, considering look, delving beyond mere politeness. A subtle tremor of excitement rippled through her, a feeling foreign and delightful. Surprise mingled with something less definable. He held her gaze, not wavering. His eyes acknowledged something unspoken passing between them, a silent understanding. Then, a slow, captivating smile bloomed on his face, and he redirected his attention to Tom. Rose felt a blush warm her throat. Dropping her gaze, she smoothed the napkins with suddenly clumsy fingers. What was that about? Was she imagining things? A trick of the sunlight? Surely, she was letting her imagination run wild. An old woman misinterpreting a harmless glance. Yet the warmth on her skin and the persistent flutter in her chest whispered a different truth. It was a reminder that beneath the wrinkles and the accumulated years, she remained a woman. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she felt, noticed. Picnic teasing. The checkered blanket Rose had laid out felt almost too perfect, the wicker basket overflowing with sandwiches and fruit adding to the idyllic scene. But even surrounded by her family, a little pocket of loneliness threatened to settle in. Then Liam appeared, a plate piled high with potato salad in his hand, and the feeling receded like the tide. "Mrs. Albright," he said, his smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "This potato salad is divine. Did you make it?" "Please call me Rose," she replied, a warmth spreading through her chest. "And yes, I did. It's my mother's recipe. A bit of a secret, though I suspect the key ingredient is just patience." He chuckled, a low, resonant sound that vibrated through her. "Patience, huh? Something I'm perpetually short on." He gestured towards her garden, a riot of color blooming just beyond the blanket's edge. "Your flowers are spectacular. What's the name of those deep purple ones?" "Those are petunias, my dear. They attract the hummingbirds, you know. It's quite a sight in the mornings." She launched into a description of the different varieties she cultivated, surprised by her own enthusiasm. Liam listened intently, asking questions about soil composition and sunlight requirements, his gaze never wavering from her face. Later, as the afternoon sun began to mellow, casting long shadows across the lawn, Liam perched beside her again. He told her a silly joke about a scarecrow who won an award for being outstanding in his field. Rose laughed, a genuine, unrestrained laugh that surprised even her. It felt good, liberating, to laugh so freely. "You know, Liam," she said, wiping a tear from her eye, "you have a wonderful sense of humor. Comes from years of observing the absurdities of life, I suppose." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Speaking of absurdities, did you see Aunt Mildred trying to explain TikTok to Uncle George? It was a masterclass in generational disconnect." Rose giggled, picturing the scene. Oh, poor George. He probably thought she was talking about some new type of clock. They spent the next hour trading anecdotes and observations, their laughter mingling with the general hum of the family gathering. Rose felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. Liam's presence was like a spark, igniting a dormant ember within her. He saw her, really saw her, not as the matriarch of the family, or the kindly neighbor, but as a woman with a vibrant spirit and a quick wit. As he stood to refill his glass of lemonade, he turned back to her, his eyes holding a mischievous glint. "You know, Rose," he said, "you don't seem old enough to have grown-up grandchildren." A blush crept up her neck. "Oh, stop it, you!" But she couldn't suppress the smile that tugged at her lips. The compliment, however outrageous, was like a shot of pure energy. For the first time in a long time, Rose felt young, desirable, alive. And she knew, with a thrill that both excited and terrified her, that this picnic was just the beginning. Caught in a stare. Millie's cheese-making debacle was unfolding, a saga of curdled dreams and dairy disasters. Rose, carefully dismantling an orange, offered the expected nods and sympathetic noises. Beneath the veneer of attentiveness, however, a subtle tremor ran through her. She felt Liam's regard, not lascivious, but intense, like an astronomer mapping a newly discovered constellation. She'd caught it earlier, during croquet, a fleeting appraisal, quickly veiled. She'd dismissed it then as mere callowness. Now, it was a constant, a feather-light burden on her senses. And then, boom! Exploded! Curd everywhere, Rose, a dairy apocalypse! Millie's voice, amplified with drama, dragged her back. Heavens! Rose offered, a polite smile stretched thin. What a fright! She chanced a look across the picnic spread. Liam, set slightly apart, seemingly engrossed in Uncle George's tomato-growing lecture. Except his focus wasn't horticultural. His gaze was riveted on her. The sheer weight of it stole her breath. It wasn't just looking, it was an excavation, digging past politeness to something vulnerable beneath. Her pulse stuttered, a hummingbird trapped in her chest. Heat climbed her throat, staining her cheeks crimson. She averted her eyes, fumbling with the orange. The segments, slick with juice, escaped her grip and landed with a soft plop. Blast it! She snatched a napkin, her fingers uncooperative. Why this sudden agitation? He was just a boy, affable, certainly, but a boy nonetheless. Yet the imprint of his gaze remained, a brand on her awareness. Everything all right, love? Millie asked, her forehead creased with concern. Peachy, Rose mumbled, avoiding her aunt's scrutiny. Just all thumbs today. She could still feel his eyes, a palpable presence, as if illuminated by a lone spotlight. Taking a steadying breath, she plunged into a fictitious interest in Uncle George's soliloquy, peppering him with questions about pH levels and irrigation techniques. Anything to divert the unsettling current of Liam's regard. But the words dissolved, meaningless. Her thoughts were a broken record, fixated on him, this scrutiny that both frightened and intrigued. It felt inappropriate, a transgression of some unspoken rule. Yet, a quiet, long-dormant part of her whispered that it also felt liberating. She risked another quick glance. He hadn't wavered. A hint of a smile played on his lips. A knowing, secret smile that sent an unexpected chill down her spine. An awkward joke. Aunt Carol watched them from her perch on the floral sofa, a mischievous glint in her eye. Liam was explaining something about the intricacies of restoring old motorcycles, his hands gesturing animatedly as he spoke. Rose was leaning forward, her attention completely focused on him, a soft smile playing on her lips. Carol had noticed the way Liam's gaze lingered a little too long on Rose, the way he seemed to seek her out in a crowded room. And Rose, bless her heart, seemed to bloom under his attention, a faint flush coloring her cheeks. The afternoon sun streamed through the bay window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The aroma of pot roast and roasting root vegetables hung heavy in the air, a comforting blanket over the bustling house. Liam paused in his explanation, catching Rose's eye, and a shared smile passed between them, a silent language only they seemed to understand. Carol chuckled, a low, throaty sound that cut through the low hum of conversation. Well, aren't you two just cozy as can be? She said, her voice laced with amusement. Liam, you seem quite taken with Rose's stories. Liam's cheeks flushed a deep crimson, and he stammered. Oh, well, Rose is very knowledgeable. About everything, really. Rose laughed, a light, tinkling sound that usually filled her with warmth, but this time felt brittle and strained. "Don't let him fool you, Carol. He's just being polite." "Polite, is it?" Carol raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, a knowing smirk playing on her lips. "Or perhaps something more?" "I wouldn't blame you, Liam. Rose has always been a captivating woman. Even I've been known to flirt with her on occasion." She winked, a gesture that only amplified the awkwardness. "Just teasing. Although," she added with a pointed look, "someone should snap her up before she disappears completely. She could use a little excitement, I always say." The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with unspoken tension. Rose's smile faltered, and she busied herself straightening the already perfectly aligned coasters on the coffee table. Liam shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting around the room, avoiding both Rose and Carol. The joke, however light-hearted it was intended to be, hung in the air like a lead weight. Rose felt a knot forming in her stomach. She hated being the center of attention, especially when it came to her personal life. Carol's comment felt invasive, a spotlight shining on a part of her she usually kept carefully hidden. She was suddenly hyper-aware of the age difference between herself and Liam, of the potential inappropriateness of his attentions. Liam felt a surge of frustration. He hadn't meant for his admiration of Rose to be so obvious, or so public. He genuinely enjoyed her company, her wit, her kindness. But Carol's comment had tainted it, casting his feelings in a harsh, unflattering light. He felt like a naughty schoolboy caught sneaking a peek at something he shouldn't. He muttered something about needing to help in the kitchen and practically bolted from the room, leaving Rose and Carol in an uncomfortable silence. Blurred lines. Rose busied herself refilling lemonade pitchers, the clinking of ice against glass a welcome distraction. She caught Liam watching her again during charades, a gaze that felt both flattering and unsettling. Better to keep moving, to make herself useful. She straightened a stack of mismatched napkins, arranged the scattered decks of cards into neat piles, anything to avoid being cornered. "Need a hand?" She jumped, nearly dropping a pitcher. Liam stood behind her, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, a sheepish grin on his face. "Just trying to be helpful," he added quickly, seeing her surprise. "Oh, thanks," Rose stammered, setting the pitcher down with unnecessary force. "I think I've got it covered." He didn't move. "Seriously, Mrs. Albright, let me help. I feel bad just sitting around." She sighed. It was ridiculous to be so flustered. "All right, Liam. You can gather the leftover plates and cups. I'll start wiping down the tables." They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the scraping of chairs and the distant chatter of the remaining guests. Rose focused on the task at hand, scrubbing furiously at a sticky patch of spilled juice. The sun, beginning its descent, cast long shadows across the lawn. "You know," Liam said, breaking the silence, "you have way more energy than anyone here." Rose chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "That's probably not true." "No, really," he insisted, stepping closer. "Everyone else is winding down, complaining about their backs or their bunions. But you're still buzzing around, making sure everyone's taken care of. It's cool." She paused, her hands still gripping the damp cloth. "Cool? Yeah," he said, his gaze intense. "You're way cooler than anyone my age. You actually do things. You're present. Most people just drift through life, waiting for something to happen. But you make things happen." Rose felt a blush creep up her neck. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at her with such genuine admiration. "That's very kind of you to say, Liam." She dabbed at the table again, avoiding his eyes. "It's just true," he said, his voice softer now. "I admire that about you. Your spirit, I guess." He shifted his weight, and Rose thought he might reach out to touch her arm, but he stopped himself. The air crackled with an unspoken tension. The spirit he admired felt dangerously close to something else entirely. The lines were blurring, the comfortable distance she tried to maintain dissolving with each passing moment. She had to redirect, to find solid ground before she lost her footing completely. Rain and revelation. The afternoon had been languid, a hazy curtain drawn across the sky, promising nothing more than stifling humidity. No one predicted the storm. One moment, lemonade was being poured and croquet balls sent skittering across the lawn. The next, the sky cracked open, unleashing a torrent of water that sent everyone scrambling for cover. Rose, caught mid-sentence with Aunt Millie about the proper way to deadhead hydrangeas, yelped as the first fat drops splattered on her floral sundress. Liam, ever the gentleman, grabbed her arm, steering her toward the porch. "Come on, Rose, before you're soaked!" The porch, with its wide eaves and comfortable wicker furniture, offered a temporary sanctuary. Rose shook the water from her hair, laughing breathlessly. "Well, that was sudden!" One by one, the others crowded inside, dripping and chattering, leaving Rose and Liam alone, perched on the edge of the porch, watching the rain transform the garden into a shimmering, blurry watercolor. The air, thick with the scent of petrichor and wet earth, hung heavy between them. The drumming of the rain on the tin roof muffled the noise from inside, creating a sense of intimacy. Rose leaned back against the porch railing, feeling the cool spray against her skin. Liam sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. He watched the rain, his expression unreadable. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Rose said softly, more to fill the silence than anything else. Liam nodded, his gaze fixed on a distant point in the storm. "It washes everything clean." Rose smiled, thinking how well that described Liam himself. He seemed to carry a quiet strength, a sense of purpose that belied his youth. She found herself drawn to his thoughtful demeanor, his genuine interest in her opinions. The silence stretched, no longer comfortable but charged with an unspoken energy. Rose glanced at Liam, noticing the way the rain had darkened his hair, the intensity in his eyes. He turned to meet her gaze, and for a fleeting moment she felt a jolt, a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. Without a word, he reached for her hand. His fingers, warm and slightly calloused, closed around hers. Rose's breath hitched. She didn't pull away. "Rose," he began, his voice low and earnest, barely audible above the rain. I really enjoy talking to you." He paused, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of her hand. "More than anyone else here, I think." The admission hung in the air, heavier than the rain clouds overhead. Rose's heart pounded in her chest. She opened her mouth to speak, to say something, anything, but the words caught in her throat. The world seemed to shrink, focusing on the feel of his hand in hers, the warmth of his gaze. The rain continued to fall, washing away the pretense, leaving only the raw, undeniable truth of the moment. The weight of guilt. Rose's hand, resting lightly on Liam's, felt suddenly foreign. The warmth radiating from his skin was a brand, searing a mark of impropriety onto her conscience. The air in the sunroom, previously thick with comfortable quiet, now vibrated with unspoken tension. A blush, hot and unwelcome, crept up her neck. She pulled her hand away, a reflexive action, like snatching it from a hot stove. "Liam, the words caught in her throat, a tangled mess of guilt and a strange, unfamiliar disappointment. She busied herself with straightening the already perfectly aligned coasters on the small table between them. The clinking of china, usually a soothing sound, now felt deafening. Liam's expression shifted, the easy openness replaced with a guarded confusion. He didn't say anything, but his eyes, those intense, searching eyes, held a question she didn't dare answer. Then, the door swung inward, and Tom stood framed in the doorway, a half-eaten sandwich clutched in his hand. The sandwich, a messy concoction of ham and mustard, looked suddenly grotesque. "Everything all right in here?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. His gaze flickered between Rose and Liam, lingering a moment too long on the space between them, where her hand had just been. A silent accusation hung in the air, thicker than the scent of the honeysuckle blooming outside. Rose forced a smile, a brittle, unnatural thing. "Perfectly fine, dear. Liam was just telling me about his university courses." The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. Tom's eyes narrowed slightly, unconvinced. "Right." He didn't elaborate, but the single word dripped with suspicion. He took a large bite of his sandwich, chewing with deliberate slowness, his eyes never leaving Liam. Liam, bless his soul, seemed to understand the situation. He stood up, a flush creeping up his own neck. Actually, I should probably get going. I promised your grandson I'd help him with something. He offered a quick, awkward nod to Rose, then hurried out of the sunroom, leaving a void in his wake. The silence that descended after he left was oppressive, heavy with unspoken words and simmering resentment. Rose felt a tremor run through her, a cold wave washing over the unexpected warmth Liam's presence had ignited. Tom finally swallowed his sandwich, the sound amplified in the quiet room. He seems like a nice young man, he said, his voice carefully neutral, but the undercurrent was unmistakable. Rose didn't reply, couldn't reply. Every word felt like a betrayal, a confirmation of the unspoken accusation hanging between them. She stared out the window, at the vibrant green of the garden, but the beauty offered no solace. The weight of her guilt settled heavily upon her, a suffocating blanket woven from stolen glances and unspoken desires. She had crossed a line she hadn't even realized existed until she was already standing on the other side. And now, she was trapped, caught between the comfort of her familiar life and the dangerous allure of something new, something forbidden. A quiet thrill. The lemon meringue pie, radiating warmth from its recent baking, wobbled precariously. Liam materialized beside Rose with an easy grace that still stirred something within her. Here, let me take that, he offered. Their fingers met in a fleeting, innocent brush, a spark that traveled up her arm. He effortlessly relieved her of the pie, its meringue peaks swaying gently. Thank you, Liam. You're a dear. Rose attempted a matronly smile, but his gaze lingered, a silent exchange that stole her breath. He escorted her to the car, the pie cradled in his hands like precious cargo. Drive carefully, Rose, he said, passing the dish through the open window. His touch lingered, a subtle pressure that spoke volumes. The look in his eyes, a blend of regard and something akin to adoration, lingered long after she'd eased away from the curb. Back in the quiet of her home, Rose replayed the day's events, the snippets of conversation, the drawn-out glances, the unmistakable current of something deeper. She confessed, a blush creeping up her neck, that Liam's attention had been a welcome surprise. It had been ages since someone had truly seen her, their eyes reflecting more than courteous respect. Yet, it was wrong. An invisible line existed, an unspoken boundary that demanded adherence. He was young, practically a boy, while she was, well, she could be his grandmother. The thrill, the almost giddy sensation she experienced in his presence, required redirection. The following morning found Rose at the community garden, a verdant patch tucked between the library and the senior center. She noticed the volunteer postings scattered around town. It was a world away from furtive glances and hushed flirtations, but the feel of earth between her fingers, the fulfillment of nurturing life, offered a different sort of allure. She dedicated the morning to weeding and watering, the sun kissing her face, the gentle ache in her back a comforting reminder of her vitality. She connected with other volunteers, a diverse group bound by a shared affinity for the earth. There was a quiet fellowship, a sense of purpose that filled an unrecognized void. The following Sunday, the Albright clan convened again, this time at Sarah's house. The atmosphere buzzed with the usual blend of laughter, chatter, and the mouth-watering scent of roasting fowl. Rose, bringing a casserole of her celebrated scalloped potatoes, felt a sense of tranquil contentment settle over her. She surveyed the room, her gaze drifting, searching for a particular face. Liam was absent. Perhaps other commitments beckoned, or perhaps, she mused with a hint of amusement, he'd sensed her retreat and chosen to maintain a respectful distance. It was inconsequential. The intoxicating allure she'd felt in his company had diminished, superseded by something more grounded, more authentic. The recollection, the unspoken moments shared, would endure, a harmless reminder that even in life's twilight years, a spark could ignite. But the spark remained contained, a quiet thrill, a secret tucked away in a vault of memories, to be savored only in the solitude of her thoughts. She smiled, a genuine smile illuminating her eyes, and plunged into the gathering, eager to embrace the warmth of her family and the simple pleasures of the day.